Here's a quote from Carl Jung. The dream is the small hidden door in the deepest and most intimate sanctum of the soul. The dream is the small hidden door in the deepest and most intimate sanctum of the soul, which opens to that primeval cosmic night that was soul long before there was conscious ego, and will be soul far beyond what a conscious ego could ever reach. It seems to me that the modern world we live in, which has its own gifts and curses, I suppose, is really, as far as I know, the first culture that has lost the language of dreams. The first culture that has not found great importance in the dream as a source of insight and nourishment and challenge, and spirituality, you could even say. In fact, I might say that dreams have always been a part of the spiritualities of the world, from mainstream religions to the most obscure, localized religious expressions. As far as we can tell, I'm speaking as kind of a student of these sorts of things. The dream world was taken seriously, and Jung has another really famous, well-known line. He says that we must always. I have to think of how it starts. Maybe I wrote it down. We have forgotten. That's what he says. We have forgotten the age-old reality, or the age-old fact, that God speaks primarily through dreams and visions. Yeah, see, that's another way of saying the same thing. And to the modern ear, we kind of get alarmed. Like, really? God speaks through dreams and visions? That will make institutionalized religion sort of shake in its boots, because you mean there might be fresh expressions of the divine and through dreams and visions? Like, we might have to take ourselves or someone else seriously, and so we'd rather shut that down and dismiss it and call it random brain firings and processing the day, or because I watched a Netflix, therefore I dreamed fill in the blank, or because so-and-so is in love with me at work is why I keep dreaming about her, or whatever the case may be. And maybe more importantly, we've lost the way into dreams, the way into being in conversation with them. We don't know where to even start. So I want to make a podcast about dreams, and I want to do really 4 things. I'm going to tell you a dream here, really short, brief dream, and I want to talk a little bit about the nature of dreams. I could spend, 20 podcasts on that. And then I want to actually do some dream work here, the way I've been trained at Animus, and a little bit of sort of my own approach, I suppose. And the 4th thing is to invite you into a dream work program. I have one in January. It's 4 sessions, 4 weeks on Sundays in January, and I have people signed up for it. So, and there's still some room, and we're going to talk about dreams for 4 weeks. We're going to talk a little bit about what they are, but and sort of ways of working with them on our own. But more importantly, we're going to listen to one another's dreams, and I'm going to work with them. And maybe more importantly, I'll just say now, my way of working with dreams is to let the dream do its work. And my formal training is at Animus, and what Animus calls soul-centric dream work. So that's my formal training. And I was also in Jungian analysis for almost 2 years, and almost exclusively worked with dreams. Now, I wasn't the analyst. I was surrendering to the process, but slightly different approach. But all that to say, dreams have been a huge part of my own story and my own spirituality, my own practice, my own way forward. And that's been a major surprise in my life. If I roll back the clock 10 years ago, I would have said, I don't remember my dreams. A couple childhood dreams, but, not really. I would have agreed with Ricky Gervais, who tweeted once, nothing is more boring than someone telling you their dreams. Well, that's if you don't know how to listen. That is if, as a culture, we've lost the ear for dreams. We don't know how to speak the language. I remember when I first moved to Israel with my wife, and we just had one kid at the time, and we stayed. I went to 2 schools there, and the first school I went to was called Jerusalem University College, and it was during the Intifada, and so there weren't many students there, and the director of the program, who was also a professor and lived there, and his family kind of hosted students, and he said, why don't you live on campus for a few days until you find an apartment, which was gracious of him and also kind of haunting. Like, imagine like Harry Potter style walls and arches and kind of the cold. We moved in January, so that kind of the cold stone of Jerusalem. It was really strange. And I went to the library one night because I couldn't sleep, and I just got a book on Hebrew off the shelf, like kind of like a primer on intro to Hebrew, and I didn't even know the characters. I didn't know any of the Hebrew characters. And I remember looking at them and thinking, I will never learn even the alphabet. Now, thankfully, that I was there long enough and worked hard enough to get beyond that kind of initial block. But that's actually how I felt about dreams too. And the first dream I ever had worked was at an Animus program, and I remember like the same feeling, like, what the hell is going on? Like, I don't know what this is. Whatever I just said yes to, and in this case, just really in the morning, re-entering the dream and letting it work, I realized, whoa, there are dimensions of my own being that I'm not in control of. And in a way I don't like, and apparently want something from me, and are hunting me down, and it's taken me sort of 10 years to even just to get the basics, learn the basic, grammar and syntax and whatever of dreams. And I'm a student here, not an expert, but a student. But it is still one of the most important parts of my own spiritual life, and one of the most important ways that I work with people in kind of one-on-one settings, in companion guiding settings, and also when I do wilderness programs. And they're incredibly fruitful for the reasons Jung just said. The dream is the small hidden door in the deepest, most intimate sanctum of the soul. And I really believe that. And it takes a lot of courage to go through that small hidden door. And sometimes we need help. Even Jung said that he couldn't work with his own dreams. He would sometimes tell them to the janitor and who knew nothing about dreams. And he would say, oh, that reminds me of this. And, then something would open for Jung in that. So I think it's a pretty common experience when we wake up in the morning to dismiss them. It's a way of saying, I don't want anything to do with this. And so anyway, that's where I'm going today. And I'll try to be brief here, because when we work with a dream, it takes about a half an hour, and you'll hear that the dreamer here, who's going to remain anonymous, had a couple dreams, and I did end up working with them both. But in the podcast, we only sort of work with one, and just for the sake of time, really. And so I want to say kind of 4 things. And the first is, I'm now in Georgia, which is why I haven't been able to put out a podcast. I'm just like 12-hour days of trying to get settled. We're living with family. We've got things in boxes. my son's home from college. My oldest daughter's moving down to Georgia at the end of this week, and it's just been like crazy. And I've sat down a couple times and I've like, I can't do it. I can't make a podcast. We've got barking dogs and trains, and I don't know. I'm like, I couldn't find the words. And a couple nights ago, I had a dream where it was my turn to speak and I couldn't, and I was kind of like laying on the ground and my head was tilted back, my chin was up and my throat was constricted, and it's not that I couldn't, I had words but couldn't say them. It's I couldn't find them. And so then I thought, well, maybe I can write. So I sat up and I tried writing, and then it seemed too crafted, too controlled, and then in the final sort of scene of this dream, I kind of just vomited everything out, kind of like in an oversharing kind of way. And there were a couple of other people that were there when I was speaking like this, and I had a kind of a strange feeling, like, am I exaggerating here? Is this really the truth? And I don't know. There was something about this dream. Irony of ironies. The person I in a few minutes that you'll hear from, I told him this dream, and he sort of was working with me and drawing some questions out, and there were some really direct connections to how I'm feeling right now that I couldn't see at first. And kind of these three modes that are alive in me. Sometimes I don't have words at all. Sometimes I'm working too hard to craft, and sometimes I'm just vomiting. And I'm sure there's a fourth alternative here, and but that's not in the dream. And anyway, so these kind of like this experience of voice constriction and has felt very real for me for the last few weeks. And I don't know. And just today, I felt a kind of relaxation, and I'm making this podcast on the solstice, and there's something about this time of year for me where I'm just flooded with dreams, and I have been for, several weeks without stopping, and I haven't even wanted to write them down. I'm like, oh God, all right. Definitely something's trying to get my attention, and I'd rather make plans, and anyway, so I don't know. Today I felt a little relaxation, and it's kind of like at least in the northern hemisphere, this is the deepest part of the dream time. Really, the dream of the earth, the night of the earth, the nighttime of the earth, and the night world, and when the night is the longest. And okay, so let me say just a couple things about maybe the nature of dreams. And I don't want to give you too much here because, I'm not trying to make a podcast that is trying to explain what dreams are. In fact, maybe the place to start is to talk about the difference between Freud and Jung, just real cursory here. But Freud also used dreams. I read his interpretation of dreams when I first got interested in Judaism. Didn't understand a word. I was like deep into these Chaim Potok novels, and often Freud is mentioned, and I was just trying to understand Judaism, but I was like blank. I got virtually nothing from that book, and that's not to say anything about the book. It's just to say about the kind of state I was in. And anyway, Freud often used dreams to work with associations. So whatever, you have an image of a cat, and what are your associations? And down the realm of associations you go until you land on the complex, often, and rooted in childhood traumas and instincts, and unmet needs and so forth. And there's a lot of value to that approach. And Jung took a slightly different path, and he sort of mused one day that, I'm kind of making this part up, but something like that. He sort of mused one day that, well, this could, you could use anything. It could be a painting. It wouldn't have to be a dream. So why a dream? Why the specific content of a dream? And so his basic orientation was to take the dream much more seriously. Like, no, this dream, this image, this scenario, this dreamer, and to trust that the dream has an intelligence of its own, and that it's oriented toward healing and growth, and is a bridge. This is my way of putting it. The dream is a bridge between what we know and what we don't know, or between our conscious waking selves and the depth of the unconscious world, which we'll never get to the bottom of. Well, every night the dream sends up a little bridge between these worlds, and maybe it's like two lovers coming to meet one another. The lovers of the underworld and our own self moving toward, like they meet on the bridge somehow. Anyway, that's the way I like to imagine dreams, and so taking them seriously is just to say, all right, I'm consenting to the possibility of a bridge between worlds here, between what I know and what I don't know. Or, to use a more exaggerated way of saying it, God speaks primarily in dreams and visions. So the mysteries, the mystery of the divine, the mystery of the world, the mystery of the psyche, the mystery of the soul, speaks in images and in clues and hints and guesses, and meets us on the bridge somewhere, and wants to open more of what is unknown to the locked-in egoic sense of self. In other words, to expand and to grow. And even, I was thinking about something James Hollis says about psychotherapy. And anyway, he says that psychotherapy activates nascent images, or I would say maybe works with nascent images and in the psyche, and then supports a dialogue with them. And maybe that's what I want to say about dreams, that to take them seriously is to let them have a say, and then to have a dialogue with them. What do you want? What do you want from me? What do you want from me, recurring nightmare? What do you want from me, dream characters? What do you want from me, night woman or night man that keeps visiting me? What do you want? Anyway, that's to begin a dialogue. And Jung, by the way, thought of this really as what he called the transcendent function. And dreams are a part of that, in which the self seeks to transcend the barriers between consciousness and the unconscious. That's another quote from Hollis. Anyway, it's to say the argument, and you can disagree if you want, of course, but the argument goes something like this: they're not random brain firings. Not only are they not random, they're oriented toward growth and expansion, integration, partnership, and dialogue. And to be in dialogue with what we don't know, I mean, isn't that the greatest human adventure? To move out into the unknown. Isn't that the great heroine and hero's adventure? So anyway, maybe that's maybe not quite enough. Maybe one more thing, because let's come back to the quote, God speaks primarily in dreams and visions, and say, okay, all right, Jung, you win. We believe you. The next question is how? How does God speak in dreams and visions? Is it like, oh, God, the divine, the mystery, the soul just tells us what to do? Like we have an affair in a dream, and therefore we're going to go have an affair. Is that how God speaks? Or we have a vision that someone dies, and which sometimes happens, and then turns out the person died, or they die a short time thereafter, and what's happening here? Like, is God telling us something? And I think the how question is one of the most troubling, and the kind of school that I've been trained in, which kind of has a Jungian base to it, and 40 years plus of dreamwork at Animus, kind of honing the craft, and also writers like Robert Johnson and Bosnak and a few others, they're both Jungians, have this kind of orientation, and that's just to emphasize that it's a low-hanging fruit in a way. In other words, it's quite accessible, is to answer the question how, is to let the dream have an effect. And in a couple minutes, you're going to hear that's what I'm doing with the dreamer here. He tells me the dream, and we kind of just slow down, and I more or less am saying, and of course I have like, few years of experience doing this, but I'm more or less saying, let it happen. Slow down, let it happen, and notice. Like, let it grow inside you, and don't just move on, which is what the ego wants to do. But just to let it work, let it percolate, let it stir. See what comes out of consenting. And that's in part, though not the only way. There are many, many channels that you can turn the radio dial toward, like those old-fashioned radio dials. You can turn the knob one way or the other, and you can strike a different frequency, and you can listen on that level. But the level that I'm primarily interested in is just the actual living effect of the dream itself, and to see what arises, and then to maybe ask questions about how can I live this forward, or what do I think this dream is asking, or what do I think this dream is bringing together, and what am I resistant to, and those kinds of things. So as you're listening, I want to invite you just to listen to the dream, and allow yourself to be just kind of taken into the dream itself, into the images. I really believe that dreaming is infectious in a good way. We listen to dreams and we're likely to remember our own, and it's because it's kind of like its own language, and like calls to like. It's like when I'm reading a lot of poetry, I start thinking poetically, and it's like that with dreams. And so just listen, let yourself go into the dream with the dreamer, and go on you can't make this stuff up. It's so wild. It's so unpredictable. It's so unknown. It's so other. It's not what we would choose to dream about, any of us. And yet there it is, and seems to have a kind of power. So yeah, just in a respectful way, just enter into the dream image and notice what's happening for the dreamer. And maybe a piece that you won't be able to pick up on is almost the entire time I've invited the dreamer here to close his eyes, and we do this in person. I'm finishing this podcast in Georgia, but we started in Michigan, in my garage where I used to make all my podcasts, and I invited him over, and we just sat there, and I gave him a mic, and he closed his eyes, and we talked for about an hour. And so I'm just mentioning that because he nor I were like trying to figure anything out. We're just letting it expand, letting it grow, and learning to listen. And so, not if you're driving, but you could even practice that. You could even close your eyes and let it kind of come in to your awareness, and just notice what you notice, and notice what it brings up for you. It might bring up feelings or thoughts or memories or dream images or experiences you once had, or paintings or pictures from childhood. And all of that is kind of the positive mythic infection that happens when we turn our attention to this archetypally rich and profound terrain, the primeval cosmic night, to quote Jung. He says, where our soul was alive before there was a conscious ego. Now, talk about belief in the eternal nature of soul, without even giving us any, what's the right word, philosophical arguments, but just a kind of an evocative, mythic image. Okay, maybe I'm feeling that's probably good for an introduction. And special thanks to my patrons who make this podcast happen. Thank you. Your support means a lot, makes this thing possible. And if you want to become a patron, patreon.com/Kent Dobson is the way to do it. KentDobson.com is my website for future offerings. Oh, I should mention 2 upcoming things. Very cool. I'll have my first Animist program in July, middle of July in Colorado. Details are on animist.org. Search under future offerings. I'm going to be co-guiding a program with Rebecca, who's a guide I apprenticed with at Animist. She's a lead guide there, long-time guide. She was also on my podcast when her book Wild Yoga came out. So anyway, I'll be co-guiding with her in Colorado, middle of July. If that interests you, this is a soul craft intensive. So it's really kind of like uh, a, a taste for a lot of different practices and maps that we use at Animus, and it's a great way and to enter into this kind of work, this soulcraft intensive. Lots of what we call soulcraft practices, which is uh, a phrase that comes straight from Bill Plotkin in his book Soulcraft. So, okay, that's coming up in July. Later in July, beginning of August, I will also have a couple of programs in Colorado, and I'll be speaking at Denver Community Church. We haven't finalized all the details yet, but last summer I led a retreat and spoke, and I'm going to do the same kind of thing. I might lead two short retreats, so shorter than Soulcraft Intensive, not too far outside of Denver, but far enough to get away from the relentless creeping sprawl of the millions of people now that live in the Front Range. So in any case, that's kind of way down the road, but I'm just planting those seeds now. I'd love to see you at those. And of course, my January program in dreamwork is right around the corner. So enough on that. Thanks so much for tuning in, and I hope you enjoy this conversation. Okay, thanks for agreeing to give this a try. Well, did you have any dreams?
I did, yeah. I have two dreams. One of them, both from the last two nights, one last night, one the night before. One of them feels a little bit like lighter and silly, and one of them feels a little heavier. Not super heavy. It's fairly heavy, I guess. Yeah.
What was the dream from this morning, from last night?
The dream from last night was the lighter one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Give me some headlines, like give them little titles.
So the one from last night, I would title, what would I say? Lessons from a Seal.
All right. And what about the one that felt a little heavier?
It doesn't feel like a heavy title, but You Can't Have My Backpack. It doesn't feel very heavy, but
maybe it was a heavy backpack.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, yeah, let's so my feeling is let's just start with the dream from last night and see where that goes. And maybe if it feels right, we'll also unpack the other one.
Okay.
So, first thing, I just want you to, in kind of first person, present tense, go back into the dream from last night and let me hear it. I may just let you tell the whole dream, and then maybe we'll do it again, go back through it. So, yeah,
Okay.
Go ahead.
So I am swimming in the ocean, and I see this seal not too far away from me, and I decide to go up, just swim up to the seal, and I kind of like wrap my arm around it and just like hang on to it, almost like give it a hug, but I'm hanging on to it to see if the seal will just like allow me to basically to pull me along, and it does. And I'm kind of like hugging the seal with one of my arms and then like petting the seal with my other arm, and my sense is like the seal is like really, really enjoying this. And I can feel, I can feel like the power of this seal as I'm hanging on to it, just like the power of its flippers, and it's just it's clearly a very powerful animal. And then the next scene of the dream, we're actually in a boat. Me and the seal are in a boat. And I don't know what we're doing, but I decide I want to take a selfie with the seal. And so I pull out my phone, I take this selfie, And I look at the picture, and when I look at the picture, it's actually a picture of me and the dog that I grew up with. It was like I grew up with a collie, and so like when I looked at the picture, it wasn't the seal; it was a picture of this dog that I grew up with, and we were on the boat that my parents had when I was a kid. So that was what was in this picture. And then the dream moves to we're both on shore in like, it's like a little town or something, but right near the water. And I was trying to get the seal like something to eat, I think. And for some reason I had all of these different types of granola. And I was like feeding him to the seal, and the seal is like he tries a bunch of them, and one thing that stood out to me he apparently does not like nuts, because the seal like takes out with his lips, like takes out all of the nuts, which just kind of made me laugh that the seal didn't like nuts. And I asked the seal, apparently I can talk with the seal, and I asked the seal like what if he likes it or what he likes, and the seal says that the granola is like too crunchy for him, and he doesn't like this granola. And next we are looking at some like tubes that you would tow behind a boat. I assume for like that, so that he can like pull me behind him or something. That's my sense about this. And we're looking at these tubes, and one of them's square, and the seal goes, we are not getting that one. And then the seal said to me, is like, you're a little heavy. Like it's a little bit tiring to pull you around. And I started to realize like, oh, this is maybe not such a two-way relationship. Maybe this is not so enjoyable for the seal. And this is, I don't know. Maybe it's just, I start to feel a little bit bad for the seal. Mm-hmm. And that's where the dream leaves it.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thanks. Let's go back into the opening scene here, and just the feeling when you're first with the seal, and is it kind of playful, or kind of like take me into that scene? Like, what time of day is it, and where are you?
Yeah. So I'm swimming in the ocean, near shore. I can see shore, and yeah, it's definitely during the day. It's definitely, I'm in a very good mood. I love swimming, and I kind of always felt like I would love to be able to have these sort of interactions, particularly with animals in the water. And so when I see this seal, I just am sort of excited. And there's also a sense of like that this is normal, like that somehow that maybe other people are doing this, that mm-hmm. It doesn't feel that strange, I guess is what I would say. Mm-hmm. And yeah, so I go up to the seal, swim up to the seal, and put my arm around it, and just kind of hang on and let it take me.
Yeah, just kind of feel into that experience, like you have your arm, almost like you're hugging mm-hmm. the seal. And mm-hmm. Is it like reciprocal in some way, like?
Yeah. In this moment, it feels very reciprocal. Like I'm kind of have my arm around it, and I with my left hand I have my arm around it, and my right hand I'm kind of like I was like petting its head. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I have this very clear sense that this feels like a reciprocal relationship.
Yeah. Can you see the seal's face at all? Like, is it looking at you, or what's it doing?
Yeah. That's kind of how I know, is it's sort of looking at me, and I'm not sure. As it's looking at me, I have this sense of like, oh yeah, this is this is the seal is enjoying this as well.
Yeah. Just try to relax here, like even in your chair, and almost like you're relaxing into the posture that you're holding with this seal and this kind of exchange that's happening between the two of you. And I don't know, really try to look into the seal's eyes here, into the seal's face, and see if there's anything else you notice about this seal, about this being.
Yeah, I think there's just a sense of like, well, almost like the seal has been like just really happy to have companionship.
Mm-hmm.
Like
you specifically, or in a more general sense?
Yeah, I think there's something really like in the same way that I am attracted to this sort of unique relationship with a wild animal. There's something reciprocated on that side of it. Like it's like there's this interesting relationship with a human that for the seal that it doesn't normally get to have.
Yeah. Yeah. And before we let this part of the dream go, I don't know if you could describe almost like as if the seal had a certain vibe to it and like its energy. How is it like yours or unlike yours? What's it like?
I think there's a way that it is unlike mine is there's this a very kind of there's a playfulness to it that I just don't have as much of. Mm-hmm. There's a just a capacity like just in the way that it's swimming. It's playing for the sake of play, I think.
Yeah, got it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then if I remember, there's kind of a change of scene, and you're in a boat together. Is that true? You're in the boat?
Yeah, mm-hmm. Yeah, we're in the bow of a boat, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And how does this feel to you? Is it just like kind of matter of fact, like all of a sudden you're in the boat, or does it concern you in any way?
No, yeah, just very matter of fact.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And then you have this desire to take a selfie, and is the feeling like, I really want to capture this moment, or this is kind of amazing, and is that sort of the mood?
Yeah, kind of. And also I felt I'm now remembering like I want to send this. Like I thought my mom would really appreciate this. She loves animals, and I'm like, oh, this would be really interesting to send to my mom. I think she would appreciate this. So that was part of it as well.
Yeah. Is that true in the day world that your mom likes animals, or just in the dream world?
Yeah, that's true in the day world.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Is this like a bond that you share in some way that between the two of you, or not really?
I would say not. I mean, kind of. Not like a huge connection point. It seems to be more so as I'm getting older. That I think that might be true. Mm-hmm. But it's just something that I know that she cares about, that she would really appreciate. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Is her love for animals kind of like childlike, innocent, straightforward?
I would say it's almost a protector sort of energy, but also like a deep appreciation, but there's also a little bit of like a protector kind of energy around it too. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And so you have this sense that my mom would appreciate this photograph, and so you do take it. Mm-hmm. And then you're somehow looking at the photograph and describe it in some detail again.
Yeah, I look at the photograph, and the face of the seal is the face of my childhood dog that I grew up with. We had a collie, a black and white colored collie, and the face of it is basically this dog that I grew up with, and initially I was like, oh, I guess that's just what this seal looks like. It didn't really seem strange to me, and then it started to. I think it later sort of hit me like, oh, that's my childhood dog. But yeah, initially in the dream, I think it almost seemed normal.
Yeah. Yeah. And okay, try to feel into what age you were. Even if it's not super specific, but it might be. But what age were you when this dog felt most important to you? Like, how old were you?
I would say 12.
Yeah. So even as we're sitting here, try to feel into your 12-year-oldness and kind of being in the presence of this dog and what it felt like, and what what's that do? What's that feel like to you?
Yeah, I think this playfulness that I had mentioned, that feels like this, it's just, that's what I remember. I guess that's what I most kind of clearly recall is playing with my dog, and just the playful energy that dogs can have. That's one of the clear things that comes up.
Yeah, I want to stay right in this playfulness, because of all things, my dog is wanting to come in to the garage. So let's let him in and see if he changes the mood here. Yeah, this is Winnie. Yeah, and I mean, it's kind of an aside, but part of listening to dreams is also just listening to the world and listening to what's happening in the moment. And yeah, and maybe all dogs, but maybe in particular this collie had a kind of playfulness that was very natural, and the seal somehow has this, and they're sort of, it's like an amalgam now of these two beings. And yeah, maybe it strikes you as a bit strange, but just kind of try to feel again the presence of the playfulness that this dog seal has, and try to even locate, if you can, just like in your body or in your awareness, like what that touches in you, or
Yeah, I feel it's there's a, how do I describe it? Like, I mean, I feel it in my heart, like in kind of in my chest area.
feel what do you feel?
Like that sense of connection, and that with my dog and with the seal, and also like I'm drawn to it, I guess I would say. Like there's a connection there, and I want, I think that's why I wanted to swim with the seal in a certain sense. Like there's something I'm almost apprenticing to there.
Yeah. Try to let that in kind of even more fully, just as if, I don't know, it sounds strange, but let the seal or the dog or the playfulness kind of enter that heart space and let it grow. And you can even imagine how you might be if you let this in more fully, or what you might say or do, or
Yeah, I feel more lightness, I would say. I feel more light, and I think I would. Yeah, I think I would. There would just be more moments of a lightness that I think I can lack.
Yeah. Yeah. And then um, let's just tug on the kind of third chapter of this dream with there are really four, but the kind of sorting out of these nuts from the granola, and the seal sort of says these are kind of too crunchy, and it's kind of a little bit odd or funny in a way that it's kind of sorting granola. But as you let this scene just kind of grow in your imagination here, do you have a sense of why? Like, why is this seal communicating this to you, or what is it up to?
Yeah, I really don't know why it doesn't like the nuts. I mean, that really strikes me. I think, I'm just trying to like give it some food. I guess my sense is, but just based on the seal's reaction, is like, it's almost like I don't need this from you. That's a little bit of what it feels like.
Yeah. Like maybe you're assuming, hey, I'm helping an animal out, but it's sort of looking at you maybe as like, I don't need this.
Yeah. And even its pickiness is just, it just surprised me, I guess. And maybe it is just this, like, I don't like, it wasn't as enthralled with this option that I gave it as I would have hoped it would have been.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And is that kind of like it starts to have a personality of its own, and is that related to when it kind of looks at you or says to you that you're too heavy?
Yeah, there's a clear shift here in the relationship from when I start to trying to offer it this food, and it sort of all of a sudden is like, I don't, it starts to be a little bit more picky. And then even like this sort of strange scene where we're looking at inner tubes, and it's like, I don't want that one. And it's just all of a sudden the energy changes to, and I start to notice, oh yeah, this is not, this almost like this, the seal has its own preferences, it has its own sort of environment, and yeah, I start to realize that I'm actually, this feels more like a one-way relationship, and almost more, I start to feel more selfish.
Selfish, like you would want more out of it. You would want the seal to be a certain way, or is that what you mean?
Yeah, or I'm. Like initially when I grab onto the seal, there's a sense of like, I'm really enjoying this and the seal is really enjoying this. And all of a sudden we're on the land and I'm trying to feed it. And it feels a little bit more like, like it's not reciprocated in a sense. Like I'm trying to have a pet now, it's that sort of unique aspect of joining a wild animal isn't there anymore.
Yeah. I mean, is it like, there's a dimension that the seal's sort of off limits to you? Is that the sense?
Or that the seal is sort of exercising its independence. Yeah. In a sense. Yeah.
Or like autonomy or something.
Yes, autonomy is a better word. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, okay. Just try to be in the presence of the autonomy of the seal now, and you could even bring your initial impressions, the initial connection, which seemed real enough, like it was enjoying your presence, and kind of put that right alongside this kind of autonomy, and what happens between these two kind of modes, two ways of being.
Yeah, so between like the initial, like where we're sort of connected, and then this part of it where there's this sort of autonomy that's exercised. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay. I think what comes out of this, what arises out of me, is this sense of like the fleeting nature of this connection. Like, there was this moment at the beginning of the dream where there was this really beautiful connection, and then towards the end of the dream, it's like I was forcing it, and and actually you have to let the seal go. Like that's what it felt like, is like there is this really beautiful connection, but you can't control it. You can't hold on to it.
Yeah. This dynamic, does this bring up anything for you? I mean, like, why would you be having this dream right now, like last night? And what kind of arises without trying to like make it mean something, or but why this terrain at this moment in your life?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely, there is a pretty consistent pattern of these sort of themes arising for me, which is the theme of like impermanence, I guess, or yeah, it feels like this is really common for me, like this being confronted with love and then also loss, like, and that both of those sort of, they coexist in a reciprocal relationship. And
like in this case, a kind of connection, even a kind of intimate connection and a friendly, playful connection, and then almost like the loss of that,
the sense that you can't try to like control it and hold on to it. Mm-hmm. That there's an element of like, you just have to like appreciate it when it's there. But you cannot manufacture it, I guess. Mm-hmm. Maybe.
Is that something you're trying to do?
I think I'm at least trying to hold on to it. Mm-hmm. I'm at least trying to keep it going, I guess, trying to deny the reality that this is a wild animal, and I can't do that. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think there's an element of trying to hold on to it.
Yeah. I mean, let's just play with the dream a little bit here, and see if you can't notice the seal and its kind of autonomy here at the end, and try to feel into the fact that you can't cling. You can't manufacture this. You can't keep it going. Even your attempts to feed it and tube behind it or whatever, it's not really working. You can't. It's not yours to do. And try to feel at the same time your own kind of playful heart that was at the beginning of the dream. A sense of ease and play, and your own 12-year-old connection with your dog and with the seal even, and try to feel those at the same time, and just let me know what's happening.
Yeah, initially, as I was trying to feel both of those, there felt like a little bit of resistance, or like almost like there wasn't room for both to be felt at the same time. Mm-hmm. But now there seems to be, like, as I've kind of sat with it just a little bit longer, it feels like there's a little bit more space for both of them to kind of live inside of me.
Mm-hmm. What's that do to you? Like, I mean, I know you're saying it's just a little space here, and mm-hmm. so maybe you don't know that much about it, but does it feel like the kind of invitation that the dream is opening you to?
Yeah, I think so. I think there's, I mean, what I feel is that as both of these start to settle in a little bit more, is like a bit of letting go, I guess. would be the feeling.
Yeah.
To sort of feel some sort of relaxing and letting go. And yeah, it does feel like there's does feel like both of these are these are both invitations from the dream of this really beautiful playfulness at the beginning of the dream, and then this like and you have to let it go.
Yeah. Yeah. And without using too much of your strategic mind, just try to answer this question, or try to fill in the blank here. I'm letting go of, and what arises?
Tension was the first word that came to mind.
I'm letting go of tension. What kind of tension? Or the tension of?
The tension of the idea that the tension of the sense that both of these things cannot coexist, that both of these feelings of playfulness and letting go can't coexist.
Yeah, you can try to let that go. Yeah. And if you let that go, if you loosen your grip, do you have any sense of like how that changes the weather of your own psyche or your body?
Yeah, I think there's just so much more room for everything. Like there's more space for the complexity that is, all of life, I guess, all of these different feelings that feel in tension with each other, maybe aren't.
Yeah, and especially for you. Yeah.
For me.
It might be true of all of life, but just for you.
For me, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, a few things are arising here for me about this dream, and I mean, it seems like we've landed on kind of the emotional invitations here, and maybe I actually don't want to offer too many things right in this moment, other than practice. Maybe there's even like three things that are in conversation here. The playfulness. I don't know exactly what you would call the opposite pole, but clinging. And then the space of, I don't know, what's in between here that seems to involve letting go in some way, and just allowing, and playfulness and impermanence too, maybe is another way of putting it. And maybe most importantly, just to carry this around, especially like in the heart space, and in a funny way too, it might be a good idea. This is kind of the opening of the dream, just to practice more playfulness, because you already said it gives you a little trouble anyway. But to practice that, but in a less clinging way, like, well, now I'm, my real spirituality is to play, or something like that, to get real serious about about your playfulness.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, maybe I want to ask you right now, what do you think was happening for you in this dream, and what surprised you about going into it in this way?
Yeah, I think I'm very surprised by. I mean, I haven't thought about it much, but I really, it hadn't really necessarily hit me the kind of trajectory of these paradoxical feelings of this playfulness and this relationship, and then letting go of it hadn't really hit me. So that surprised me, I think, in this. And also it all feels very like right for this moment in my life.
Yeah.
And just like I said, for so many things that are coming up, and for so many, it feels like there's so many aspects of my life that are pointing me to reconciling myself to these sort of feelings that can feel at odds.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm kind of speaking generally because I think there's a lot of feelings, but this is just naming like one aspect of that, it feels like. So it feels very timely, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. So at this point in our session, I actually ask the dreamer here about the second dream, the one that he called darker. And we follow the threads of that dream and for another half an hour, and that just seemed like the right course at the time. And just for the sake of this particular podcast, I thought I just do one dimension here, but it was an interesting deepening, and in some ways, by the end, we were wondering about the relationship between these two dreams, which has its own kind of power. And since they came sort of back to back, it's like they were having a conversation, or dimensions of the dreamer here were in conversation, sort of with one dimension of the psyche is in conversation with another dimension of the psyche, and both are worth turning some attention to. And that can often be how dreams and dream sequence that kind of unfolds as a dialogue. So I'm not sure exactly how I want to land the plane here, because I don't know, my primary intention here was just to give you a little taste, and that's what I hope the last half hour was with the dreamer here, a little taste of surrendering to the intelligence of the dream, to the feelings and characters and images and scenarios, to let them grow and have an effect, and to explore that and to slow down. That's really all I was doing. That's my primary intention, was to let the dream keep doing its work. And my primary invitations, though I didn't give too many here, and we talked about some other invitations in the second half of our session together, but really the aim of the kinds of questions or possibilities I was pointing toward was just to let the dream keep working, sort of like saying, practice this kind of playfulness, practice embodying this dimension of the seal and the kind of childhood dog, and to feel the impermanence of things, and to practice a letting go, and what that meant specifically for the dreamer here, not just in a general sense, like, kind of like a general invitation, but more specifically how the dream was creating this sort of dynamic between these worlds that are alive inside the dreamer here. And interestingly enough, as kind of an aside, oftentimes paradoxes arise, especially as we grow older. In fact, James Hollis says that's the definition of an adult, really, one who's able to hold greater and greater paradoxes, and so we expect to find them in a maturing psyche, and here was one, this kind of love and loss dynamic, and he was even hinting, the dreamer was even hinting, that this is a major theme right now for him, these kind of worlds that feel at odds, and maybe they're not in the way he initially feels them to be. So maybe that's all I want to say here at the end. There are, of course, all kinds of kind of archetypal layers here, and images inside the images themselves that we could go into, but that's not primarily what a dreamwork session is, the kind I like to hold. The primary invitation is to let it work, and then of course there are layers. There are dream themes and sometimes images like the ocean or wild animals or even the sorting of seeds. These have kind of threads of connection to myths and stories and legends, but it's almost better to hold those, maybe to take the dream image here, to hold them loosely, to let them go a bit, even if there is some resonance between, because the ego just wants to say, there's such an interpretive hunger in the ego, and we want to try to set that aside as best we can and let the mystery of the dream in fact do its work, because the healing agent really is the psyche and the mystery, and not our power to interpret or cram it into our given rubric of how we think the world should be. So anyway, I hope you at least heard some hints and guesses. If this kind of thing, I'll think about making another one. I have another friend who's interested and willing to do this kind of experiment with dreams, so that might happen. In any case, wishing you well during this winter solstice, during the holidays here, and hope to be back on the air shortly. Peace.